Hey, welcome everybody to another episode of The Grueling Truth, brought to you by Gridiron Mo, a new interactive football app where you get to call what you think the offense or defense should do during a live NFL game and to see what all other fans around the country have called also. Check out Gridiron Mo at www.gridironmo.com. As always, I'm your host, Mike Goodpaster. Right now I want to welcome in the immortal Matt Andruscavage, my co-host.
The immortal. I love how the names just keep changing, but I will take it.
Well,
good to be here.
None of the dirty names I use for you because we'd probably get in trouble. But
what
the heck?
Yeah, immortal's good. Stay there.
No guests tonight, but we have a topic. It's another baseball show, which we've had success with in the past. So hopefully everybody will enjoy this one also. We're going to top 10 World Series in Major League Baseball history.
Yes.
What was your criteria, Matt?
Well, combination of how many close games we had, because you go watch World Series, an entire series, and if every game is 10-0, well, if you like offense, well, that's nice for one team, but doesn't really make for a great series unless you've got a few close games. I also look at did one team begin to dominate the first couple of games, and then there was a comeback by the other team, even if the scores weren't always close. So I think that matters too. It makes for a great series when it kind of goes back and forth, even if the games aren't, 1 or 2 run difference. So also dramatic, great moments, dramatic moments. So kind of a combination of the three, and I came up with my top 10. How about yours?
Well, I don't have any criteria. It's the 10 most exciting movies I picked. You're the one with the Sabermatics and all that crap, so we'll just let you do that. I just picked the 10 off the top of my head that I thought were the best. How about that? But I will have good reasons for every one of them, or most of them, or good reasons to me, which is all that matters to me. But so, what's your number 10?
My number 10 is the 1960 World Series, the Bill Mazeroski series.
Okay.
I felt, you did have, you got the Yankees, definitely were favored. They blew them away in a couple of games, but then you had the big Game 4 with Vern Law and Bill Burton bringing the comeback to win. The Pirates, when they would win a game, they'd win it only by a run, but it was a really good game. They had a couple of times. And then you got the dramatic Game 7. It's a 10-9 game, by far one of the greatest World Series games of all time. You got the 5-run 8th inning with, I believe, Hal Smith was a reserved catcher. He comes in, hits a 3-run homer. Roberto Clemente had a single, and then that gave him a 2-run lead, and then the Yankees come up and tie the game at 9, and Bill Mazeroski hits the home run that we all remember to win a Game 7. I think it is the only Game 7 with a game-winning home run to win the World Series.
I believe so. I think there's been walk-off singles and stuff before. I think 1991, Gene Larkin.
Yep.
Who was the dude that hit it in 97?
Luis Gonzalez.
Luis Gonzalez.
97. Gonzalez in 01, but 97, I forget who did it, 97 for the Marlins.
It was some short guy. All right. My number 10 is an old one, which would be the 1924 World Series. Between the Washington Senators winning the only series the Senators ever won to win a world championship. They beat the New York Giants in 7 games. Bucky Harris was the player-manager for the Senators. John McGraw was the manager for the Giants. I believe that was his last World Series. The first 2 games, great games. The Senators lost Game 1 in 12 innings, came back and won 4-3 the next. They trade games till you get to Game 7, which Walter Johnson, I think, was 36 years old, nearing the end of his career, was shelled a couple games early in the series. But the Game 7, I think, is considered one of the greatest games in Major League Baseball history. The Senators were behind 3-1 in the 8th. Bucky Harris, who was also the manager, hits a routine ground ball to third, which hits a pebble, takes a bad hop over to Giants third baseman Freddie Lindstrom. 2 runners scored on the play, tying the score at 3. Then the great Walter Johnson comes in to pitch the 9th, held to Johnson, scoreless in the extra innings. When with the score tied 3-3, Washington came up in the 12th with one out. Runners on first and second. Earl McNeely hits a grounder at Lindstrom, and again the ball takes a bad hop, scoring Muddy Rule with the series game-winning run. And I don't think there has ever been a World Series ended with the winning run being scored by somebody with as cool a name as Muddy Rule.
Probably right. I also like the 1924 World Series, but I will talk about them later.
All right, just like I'll talk about the 1960 World Series in a little bit. Of course, there's not much either one of us can say now since we screwed it up for each other. But
well, this is what happens when we don't talk about it ahead of time.
Well,
that's all right.
Well, we shouldn't.
That's what makes it fun.
I know. That's what makes it interesting for the millions of people listening.
Exactly.
What you got at number 9?
Number 9, I have the 1980 World Series between the Phillies and the Royals. Not a 7-game World Series, but definitely a series that went back and forth. You got Philadelphia winning the first 2 games at home. Weren't not like they blew them out or anything. A 1-run and a 2-run game. You got Kansas City edging them out in the bottom of the 10th. Dan Quisenberry getting the win, and then Game 4, they get a 5-3 win. And, Game 5, Phillies finally the first team to win a road game, the big Game 5, and then it was Tug McGraw and Steve Carlton winning in Game 6 against a very good Royals team. One of the more entertaining World Series that I've ever watched.
Okay. I disagree, but that's all right. I don't have it in my top 10. The Game 6 was kind of a blowout.
It's 4-1.
I think it was a good World Series. Actually, it was one of my favorites that I watched. I was more of a Royals fan than I was a Phillies fan, so maybe that's why. If the Royals would have won, maybe I'd have liked it more.
Well, they had Pete Rose. Weren't they starting to take your Big Red Machine over to Philly at that time?
And that was 83 when they had the Wheeze kids, which was, Joe Morgan and Tony Perez joining him. But even though I'm a Reds fan, I am not a Pete Rose fan, but I think that's probably been established on earlier shows. So I'll let that die.
That is true.
Yeah, I'll let that die. My number 9 would be the 1964 World Series between the St. Louis Cardinals and the New York Yankees. Great series. Bob Gibson, Mel Stottlemyre, Ray Sadecki, Whitey Ford. He had a lot of great players, a lot of great pitchers. Basically traded wins back and forth. I mean, at 2 games all at Yankee Stadium, the Cardinals beat the Yankees in 10 innings, 5-2. Puts them up 3-2. Looks like the series may be over until the Yankees come back, win Game 6, forces Game 7 at Busch Stadium, where we have the aforementioned Mel Stottlemyre and Bob Gibson pitching in a Game 7, which, unbelievably, Bob Gibson was pitching. It was a 7-5 game. I didn't think he ever gave it more than a couple runs in a game. But and the amazing thing about Gibson is it was his 3rd start of the series on just 2 days rest.
Right.
So, I think that's probably why he gave up a little bit more runs than normal. But I like that series. Bob Gibson, Mickey Mantle, Clete Boyer, Lou Brock, Kent Boyer. Both teams were loaded with guys that were going to be Hall of Famers. Bob Gibson won the series MVP. I think he was 2-1 with a 3 ERA. Jim Bouton had a World Series. He might have been the World Series MVP if they win Game 7. Because he won 2 games in the series, had a 1.56 series ERA, and then 6 or 7 years later wrote the classic baseball book, Ball 4, which I know I read when I was like 10 or 11 years old. Great book. I would highly suggest everybody read it. But
I have the book. I haven't been able to get through it yet.
So, there's not enough pictures for you. I know you're from Milwaukee.
Yeah.
So picture books are what you're big on.
I need a. If they'd have made it in pop-up form, I'd probably be done with it by now.
Yeah, you need picture books or something with Barney on it.
That's right.
That way you can read it to your daughter, too. So
yes.
If you're like me, that's about the only thing I've read since my kids were born was whatever I read to them. So, but the one good thing is my oldest son loved the book Vince about Vince Lombardi. I read that to him when he was real little. I used to read it to him when he was falling asleep. But my wife thought it was nuts. She still does, too. I probably shouldn't have used that in the past tense, but...
yeah, exactly. She didn't get over it.
Number 8.
Number 8, the 2001 World Series. That one, It wasn't. I mean, it's number 8, not number 2 or 3, but it was really good. I think what I really liked about it was how they used Curt Schilling and Randy Johnson. The Diamondbacks had a really good team. The Yankees, they were looking for their 4th World Series in a row and 5th in 7 years. And, the Yankees were still pretty much still the Yankees. But the Diamondbacks, they had a good lineup. They had a lot of good players on the team, like Luis Gonzalez, Craig Counsell. But it was the Curt Schilling, Randy Johnson show. They'd come out and win. They'd blow the Yankees away in the first 2 games. Schilling and Johnson each get a win, and then Game 3, the Yankees edge them out 2-1. But Game 4 was really good. You had Tino Martinez hit the 2-run homer in the bottom of the 9th to tie the game. And then Derek Jeter had another one of his big clutch moments in the bottom of the 10th. Game 5, that was the Scott Brocious home run in the bottom of the 12th to win 3-2. Game 6 was a blowout, but then there's the Game 7. I mean, it was kind of one of those, Mariano Rivera is kind of like the Dennis Eckersley at the time. And, when Dennis Eckersley would come out or when Mariano Rivera come out, the game is usually over. Mariano Rivera comes out, bases loaded. Luis Gonzalez hits one of the most dramatic base hits in World Series history to win, in my opinion, an upset. And very entertaining series, went back and forth, a lot of close games, some really great moments. Randy Johnson and Curt Schilling each pitching on almost no rest. I think Randy Johnson pitched in like 2 or 3 straight games as a reliever. But just fantastic World Series, one of the best I ever saw.
I think it should be higher, and I'll tell you about that later.
All right.
I got number 8 is the 1955 World Series, Brooklyn finally beating the New York Yankees. It was the 5th time in 9 years that the Yankees and the Dodgers had met. The only time the Dodgers won. I think they met in 56 too, didn't they?
Yes, that was the Don Larson
perfect
no-hitter.
Yeah. I said perfect game. I was wrong. Okay, never mind.
Oh, yeah, perfect game, not just a no-hitter. Yeah.
That's what I thought. Oh, so you were wrong. All right. I can live with that better.
Yeah, it was a perfect game.
But, I mean, the Brooklyn Dodgers, New York Yankees, great rivalry, but it was a one-sided rivalry. And it looked like it was going to stay that way. The Yankees win the first 2 games at Yankee Stadium. Dodgers came back, won 3 straight at Ebbets Field. Yankees win Game 6, 5-1 over the Dodgers at Yankee Stadium, which set up Game 7. And I'm sure everybody thought that would just be the same thing that always happened with the Dodgers losing in the end. But Johnny Padres pitched, I think it was an 8-hit shutout, one of the greatest pitching performances in a Game 7 you'll ever see. It was the only, I believe Jackie Robinson was at the end of his career, but still got to win a World Series. Sandy Amorose made the dramatic catch. Off Yogi Berra in the 7th inning. It was a great World Series, and the best part was that the Dodgers finally beat the Yankees, and luckily they did it a couple years before they ended up moving to L.A. So,
right.
Do you have that series in your top 10?
I don't have it in my top 10, but it doesn't really matter because there's so many other World Series that could make a top 10 list. We've only got over 100 years worth, and there were so many great World Series. So actually it kind of makes it a little bit more fun if we don't have the exact same list.
I know, because me and Dave just did a top 10 middleweights list of all time, and we were, like, matching on half of it. It really sucked.
I mean, a lot of times you and I do have a lot of the same lists, and we're probably going to get there as we get higher on the list. But there's so many great World Series. I got an old one as well. Well, actually, it is. It's the same one you brought up.
7 up or 7?
My number 7 is the 1924 World Series. What was really cool about that, like you said, Walter Johnson is nearing the end of his career. Everyone's pulling for him. He loses the first 2 games he's involved with, and losing games 1 and 5. And, you got a couple of 12-inning games. The series is knotted up at 4. The Giants take a 3-2 series lead, and the Senators tie the series up, going to the 7th game. On 2 days rest, Walter Johnson comes in, and the Senators end up winning, like you had talked about before, in 12 innings. one of the most famous World Series of all time, and I like Walter Johnson a lot. So I had to rank that one in there.
All right. Well, and I've got a matching one from you that you had lower. I got my number 7 is the 1960 World Series, which was Pittsburgh beating New York in 7. I'm not going to recap a whole lot of it because I think you nailed it pretty good. But, I mean, the thing that impressed me the most is in that series, the Yankees win the games the Yankees win are 16-3, 10-0, which are 2 back-to-back like that. And then Game 4, Yankee Stadium, the Pirates come out and beat them 3-2. The Pirates beat them again in Yankee Stadium 5-2. They're up 3-2 going home. Looks like they're going to get it. And then Game 6, the Yankees beat them 12-0. So, I mean, if you look at it, the games the Yankees won, they scored, 38 runs. So they averaged like 13 runs almost a game in the 3 games they won. But yet they lose the series on Mazeroski's home run. Mazeroski's home run has to go down as maybe the greatest home run ever hit, especially considering nobody else did it like that. And, I mean...
That and Bobby Thompson, those have to be the 2.
Yeah, but Thompson was just to get to the playoffs.
Yeah.
But then again...
So I'm just saying, those have got to be the 2 most famous home runs.
All right. So what do you got for number 6?
Number 6, I'm going way back to the dead ball era. 1912 World Series between the Boston Red Sox and the New York Giants. Boston is 105-47. New York is 103-48. You got Smokey Joe Wood. Look at the scores of these games. Game 1, 4-3. Game 2, it's a very unique World Series. Game 2 ends in a tie. And so it goes all the way to the end of the 11th inning. It's tied 6-6. And the rules back then, you didn't play beyond that, apparently.
No, it got dark.
What's that?
It got dark.
It got what?
It got too dark to play.
Oh, that's right. Okay. Yeah.
That would be my guess. Because, I mean,
something like that. I don't remember exactly why it was called.
Yeah, I was back there back then. It was in a former life. I was Casey Stengel.
Just speaker.
Smokey Joe Wood is like the coolest name ever. He should have had a barbecue place.
Yeah, that was one of them. And then, he's pitching against the great Christy Mathewson. So you have a tie in Game 2, so that game gets scratched. Game 3 is a 2-1 game. Game 4 is a 3-1 game. You got Smokey Joe Wood winning his second game in Game 4. Christy Mathewson ends up losing Game 5 in a 2-1 battle, a big-time pitcher's battle. And, you got the Giants tying the series up in Game 7, 3-3. It was a blowout, but then you got Game 8, Smokey Joe Wood against Christy Mathewson. Game goes to the bottom of the 10th, and the Boston Red Sox score 2 runs to win 3-2, and a come-from-behind Game 8 World Series win. And that was back when, in the teens, I believe Boston won 3 World Series, and then, they had Babe Ruth, and then everything went downhill from there. But very unique World Series. Smokey Joe Wood versus Christy Mathewson. I think it deserves top 10 consideration.
Was that the game where you had Fred Snodgrass's error and then Merkel's boner?
Oh, boy.
I think that's the game
12?
with Merkel's
It was either
boner.
12 or... Yeah, it might have been. Yeah, I think you're right.
And like the coolest thing about Merkel's boner is this. I just got to say boner like 4 times on here, and it didn't even sound that close.
This is like Beavis and Butthead. He said boner.
Yeah, I said boner. I've been holding that in for like 5 minutes. I wanted to say, was that Merkel's boner? But
I think that was the game.
Yeah, because Snodgrass made the error, and Burkle had a boner, and they lost the World Series. But all right,
good thing I brought this series up.
I know. I can't believe I never thought about bringing up Merkel's boner. It could be an explosive topic. But
right.
We're at number 6, right?
Yeah, you got your number 6. What you got?
I got the 1986 World Series between the Mets and the Red Sox, which the Mets, I think, were huge favorites. It was one of mine until Game 6. But the Mets were huge favorites. They won 108 games. John McNamara coaching Red Sox won 95. I believe in that series, the first two games, the Red Sox won. I think Bruce Hurst shut them down in game one, and they beat Darryl Strawberry. They're up 2-0 going back to Boston. Looks like they got the series won, and then the Mets pitching depth got them with Darling, Fernandez, and all those guys. They took 2 out of 3 in Boston. They come back. Everybody knows about Game 6. Bill Buckner. What else can be said but Game 6? Bill Buckner. And John McNamara blew the series anyways when he left Calvin Schirardi in too long.
Yep, Schirardi probably should have been pulled.
Yeah, and the Game 7 was a good game. I mean, Boston was up 3-0 going all the way to the bottom of the 6th. They give up 3, so it's 3-3 going to the bottom of the 7th.
Yep.
And the Mets have a 3-run inning there. But, see, I think you undersold a Game 7 because the thing people forget is Boston's up 3-0. It's 3-3 going to the bottom of the 7th. New York goes up 6-3. Boston comes back and makes it 6-5 in the top of the 8th.
That's right.
But it was the bottom of the 8th, and I'm not 100% sure because I'm going off memory on this one, but I think Schiraldi gave up the extra couple runs there in the 8th also. Yes,
I believe it was 8-6 or 8-5 was the final.
Yeah, it was 8-5. But I mean, if he doesn't give up those runs, you go to the 9th inning at 6-5. It could be completely different. But and plus the fact that who was the backup first baseman for the Red Sox then? Was it Stapleton?
Oh boy, that sounds right.
I can't
backup
remember.
First baseman.
Why wasn't he in the game? But what the hell? What you got at number 5?
The 1986 World Series.
That makes it
Red
easy.
Sox and Mets. I think the only disappointing thing about that series to me was at the time you had Roger Clemens and Dwight Gooden, probably regarded as the 2 best pitchers in the game, facing off in Game 2, and it just wasn't much it just didn't meet the expectations of what we were hoping for, and it ended up being a lopsided Boston win, I believe. Oh no, it was the Boston won that game.
Yeah, like 9-2, 9-3.
Yeah, so the Red Sox. What was really interesting about that series was the Red Sox go into New York and win the first 2, and then I mean that's a big time upset. I mean, like you said, the Mets had won 108 games, one of the best, as we talked about in our previous baseball show, one of the best baseball teams ever. And then New York goes in and takes 2 out of 3 in Boston. And I'll never forget, Game 6, probably my favorite World Series moment ever, regardless of the fact there were a couple of errors in it. That Dave Henderson comes in the top of the 10th, hits the 2-run homer, and with 2 outs, and to be able to pull off the victory that they pulled off, it is amazing. And the Game 7 was good, but I think the score is a little deceiving. But like you said, it was Boston's up 3-0, and the Mets just 2 3-run innings, and then a couple insurance runs after Boston makes that run. They had the pitching depth, they had the lineup, they had everything, and Boston gave them a good run, but in the end, it was the better team that probably won the series.
All right, so we're up to my number 5. My number 5, I believe, is the most underrated World Series in history. People never bring up on this list. That's 1972. Between the A's and the Reds. The first 5 games of the series were decided by 1 run. Game 6, the Reds come back down 3-2 Riverfront Stadium to win the game 8-1. Sets up Game 7. Joe Rudy made a few great plays. Gene Tennis had the series of his life in the series.
Yeah.
And the A's beat the Reds 3-2 with, I believe, Pete Rose hitting one to the wall. Another reason why I don't like Pete, because he couldn't hit it over the wall.
Joe Rudy.
Yeah, Catfish Hunter pitched a great game in Game 7. Raleigh Fingers saved the game. I mean, it was a great World Series. The thing is this. When you look at the Reds and the A's and Reggie Jackson's, and I Jackson missed this series, actually, if I remember correctly, but with the Johnny Benches, Tony Perez's, all these guys, the composite box score for all 7 games was the Reds scored 21 runs in 7 games, and the A's scored 16. And the Reds lost the series.
Yeah.
I mean, that's between those 2 teams. Oakland averaged a little over 2 runs a game. The Reds averaged 3 runs a game. The other thing that was amazing about it, when you look at it, you look how long games are now. That 7-game World Series only had one game that lasted longer than 2.5 hours, and that was 2 hours and 50 minutes. I mean, the average time for a game in the 1972 World Series was like 2 hours and 18 minutes. So,
right.
I don't know if that's interesting or not, but it was to me. You know,
well,
each team had just 46 hits and a combined batting average of 209, which I think to this day is still the lowest recorded combined batting averages for two teams in a 7-game series.
Yeah, Big Ten pitchers battle.
But, all right, so what you got at number 4? I guess you don't have the 72 World Series listed at all, right?
My number 4 is the 1972 World Series.
Dang it! I was going to bust your ass about having that 1980 World Series on there. It could have made for a good,
No, it was a fantastic series. And here's what I really like about that series. To me, it's the 1970s was probably my favorite decade of baseball because of all the great teams. You had all the mini dynasties. And what was really great about it was I think these were the two best of the mini dynasties from 72 to 81, and they got to meet in a World Series. Like you said, though, Reggie Jackson wasn't there. I'm pretty sure you're right on that. Reggie Jackson wasn't there, but you go top to bottom of these lineups. The amount of Hall of Famers in this World Series, fantastic. You got the Joe Rudy play.
For some reason, the World Series is just kind of forgotten.
Yeah, it's because 75 gets so much credit. 73, I don't know, maybe 73 gets credit because Willie Mays is on the Mets.
I don't know. I don't
what
really
it is.
hear that many people bring up 73 when you talk about it. And I'll tell you,
it's mainly 75 and 78, 79.
And you talk about baseball in the 70s. The thing that made baseball in the 70s great was you had the many dynasties like Baltimore, Oakland, Cincinnati, Yankees, but you had a bunch of other teams that were almost mini dynasties. You had Philadelphia. You had Pittsburgh. I mean, there was a ton of teams. Yeah, the Royals.
Kansas City was good, yep.
Yeah, I mean, you had all those teams that were just, just a play away. I mean, the Royals had a great team. It was just a really
strong league.
Yeah, the Royals had a great team, never got to the World Series till 1980. You take away a Chris Chambliss home run, maybe they were playing the Reds in 1976. But they lost in 4 games also, because as we established before, that was the greatest team that ever lived. All right. What you got now?
Well, we're at number 3. Is it time to hear a word from our sponsor?
No, okay. Well, we can do that whenever you want, but since you're taking control, go ahead and tell us a little bit. Matt is right. Hey, remember to check out Gridiron Mo, though, at www.gridironmo.com. So we will be back to continue this riveting discussion after a word from our sponsors.
Only a few more preseason games to go before the regular season kicks off, and you could start the season by winning $2 million in Week 1 at DraftKings.com, America's favorite one-week fantasy football site. It's the biggest fantasy football contest ever. $10 million in prizes are up for grabs, including $2 million for first place and $1 million for second. One-week fantasy means no season-long commitments. It's fantasy football on demand. Play where you want, when you want, with the players you want. Just pick up your players, pile up the points, and pick up the cash. That's it. You've never experienced football like this. Every game feels like the playoffs, even in Week 1. And every broken tackle or spectacular catch can take you closer to a $2 million prize. This isn't fantasy as usual. This is DraftKings. Welcome to the big time. Hurry to DraftKings.com now and use promo code SPREAKER to play for free for a shot at $2 million in the Week 1 Millionaire Maker. Enter SPREAKER for free entry now at DraftKings.com. That's DraftKings.com.
Man, we're back, Matt.
All right.
So where are we at? Number 3?
So I had my number 4 was the 1972 World Series. I believe they were your number 5, so I think we're on your number 4.
Where are we now? All right.
Am I right?
I just realized I had 1955 listed twice. Now, I'm going to go the 1968 World Series.
That was a good one, too.
Between Detroit and St. Louis. 7-game series. I believe that was an upset. I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, the year of the pitcher, I still don't know how Bob Gibson lost 9 games that year. 22-9 with his, I believe he had 2.11 ERA. Yeah, I mean, it's ridiculous. But
actually, Detroit won more games than St. Louis that year, though, even though it seems like an upset.
Yeah, you're right. Wasn't that the 31 game, is that Denny McLain?
Yeah, and then Mickey Lolich was also on that. Actually, I think Lolich
Mickey Lolich
damaged the World Series than McLain did.
Yeah.
But
yeah,
I mean,
top to bottom, you compare the lineups, and St. Louis is probably the better team, but it's just one of those things.
Yeah, Gibson beats McLain game 1. I think it's the game he struck out like 19 or 20.
17.
17,
yeah. 17 strikeouts game 1.
Yeah, game 2, Lolich come back and beats Browse. I mean, it's great pitchers on the teams. Then Gibson wins game 4, beats Denny McLain again. And Mickey Lolich, I think, is a very underrated pitcher. He's probably a better pitcher than Denny McLain. McLain comes back, throws a gem to win game 6. And in game 7, Mickey Lolich, for the 3rd time, beats Bob Gibson. Well, not Bob Gibson, but it's the 3rd time he won in the series. Made it sound better. But
I was going to say, did he beat Bob Gibson?
He beat Bob Gibson in game 7.
Okay, that was game 7.
Yeah, he beat him 4-1.
Yeah.
But, I mean, Gibson surrendered 2 out hits to Norm Cash, Willie Horton, and Jim Northrup, which gave up most of the runs. And those guys are pretty good players, though. So that's my number 4. Plus, I mean, it was Detroit, and there was a really good documentary. Did you ever see the HBO documentary about it, City on Fire?
City on Fire, I've got it. Yes, I've seen it.
Yeah, very good documentary. I would highly recommend that. We'll go ahead and go to my number 3, because my number 3 is the 2001 World Series.
Ooh, all right.
Now, the World Series was extremely dramatical. A little rascal's humor there. But I know there was a few blowouts in it, but like you said, the Game 7 was as dramatic as it gets. I think Schilling and Johnson combined for that one. Game 3 was a 2-1 game. The Yankees were down 2-0. I mean, the Yankees could have easily lost that series in New York. I mean, you had 2 walk-off home runs to win games 4 and 5. Game 6, Arizona destroyed New York. But the Game 7 was one of the most dramatic games in Major League Baseball history and one of the best games, I believe. I mean, they beat Mariano Rivera. And, I mean, that was down 2-1, bottom of the 9th. You think the game's over? I remember thinking the game was over.
Oh, yeah. It had a lot. It reminded me a lot of Kirk Gibson, Dennis Eckersley. Yeah, that's what it reminded me of, too. And this is the thing. I liked both of those endings, so that made it even better. I should have had the 1990 World Series at number 1, because I know that's your... I'm surprised you don't.
Well, it was a 4-game sweep. It's hard to justify that. And then I'll just look like a homer like you do with all this 49er propaganda crap you pull off during the shows.
Right.
But what's your number 3?
My number 3 is probably going to be a little unique. The 1958 World Series. The Milwaukee Braves were world champions in 1957.
I knew we'd have to have Milwaukee in it.
No, they lose.
I know, but still, they always lost in the World Series except for 1957. So. Yeah,
so they come out in 1957. They were really good. They won it in 7 games. Probably have a better team in 1958. They go out to a 3-1 series lead. After. They get a run in the bottom of the 10th to win Game 1 in dramatic fashion. They win Game 2 13-5, and the Yankees come back and they get a shutout with Don Larson. But then, Warren Spahn beats Whitey Ford in Game 4, and then the Braves start to get a little cocky. They say something like, I think the story goes, Spahn and Burdette were talking about how they wish the Yankees were in the National League because then they'd only finish 5th. And I guess that got back to the Yankees, and it was Bob Turley who ends up taking control of the series, pitching a shutout in Game 5 to go up to win 7-0. He gets a save 2 days later in the bottom of the 10th to win 4-3. He saves the game, and then Game 7 they come back out. Bob Turley again pitches Game 7 against Lou Burdette. They complete the comeback down from 3-1. Not a lot of teams have come back from 3 games to 1. One of the most memorable series in my book.
All right. I think that falls well short of being number 3, though. Come on, Matt. You had 2 extra inning games, but other than that, the other games were all blowouts. Game 7, I'll give you, was 2-2 till the 8th inning. They gave up 4 runs. But you look at 13-5, 4-0, 3-0, 7-0. That's the middle of the series. And I think when you compare it to 2001, where you get the 2 walk-offs in the middle of the series and then the walk-off to end the series, I don't see how you could put that above 2001.
Yeah, pretty close. I mean, it's like I said, it wasn't just the close games that and the dramatic moments. That, being down 3-1 when your back is up against the wall, 3 straight games, and you got a pitcher that's going to come out and pitch in 3 straight games the way he did. It's just one of those things where you just don't see it a lot. That's all.
Well, what's your number 2?
My number 2, the 1991 World Series.
We're dead on this one, so.
Yeah, I think we're going to be in agreement the rest of the way. The 1991 World Series was very unique because I think every game. I mean, was there any game that was a blowout?
Yeah, 14-5 was a game.
That's right. There was one. Yes, you're right. There is one. But like every other game is like 2-1, 1-0, 3-2, and. Now, I was not a Twins fan at the time. I was pulling for the Braves, but unfortunately the Twins had one of my favorite players of all time, Jack Morris. And my brother was a big Kirby Puckett fan, so I was like, I like Jack Morris, but I don't want the Twins to win. I like the Braves. I like all the pitchers the Braves had. I like Ron Gant. But, you got to take your hats off to the Twins on that one. Kirby Puckett's game-winning home run. I think that was Game 6, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that was crazy awesome. And he had the big catch up against the wall. He was just a great player. I like Kirby Puckett.
Yeah, I think he hit the home run off Charlie Leibrandt.
Yeah. What a pitching staff the Braves had. Then you got Game 7, you got Smoltz versus Jack Morris. Jack Morris could have pitched the whole game. And then I'm sure you're going to want to talk a little bit about, I won't take the whole series. I'll let you talk about it. But by far one of the finest series you'll ever watch. Every game was good except I think one of them, like you said.
Well, to me, the thing that stands out is the Jack Morris and John Schmaltz. I mean, they both pitched 9 innings of shutout baseball. 2 of the greatest pitching performances, and people forget about Schmaltz because they brought him out. I can't remember if they brought him out at the end of the 8th or the 9th, but I think they brought in Alejandro Pena, who gave up the winning run. It was a great series. And what Jack Morris did that night to pitch 10 shutout innings to win a World Series, right there makes him a Hall of Fame pitcher in my book.
Oh, yeah. Did he actually make the Hall of Fame? If he did, then that's just a crime.
Let's check real quick. I'm texting him right now.
He was so good with Detroit. The 84 Tigers.
I just texted him to ask him, so.
Well, if they have him on our show, so we can talk about it.
Pretty soon. No, he's not in the Hall of Fame. 5-time All-Star, 4 World Series championships, World Series MVP, 2-time Major League Baseball wins leader, 254, 186, 3.90 ERA, 2,400 strikeouts.
Yeah.
But there's intangibles there too.
Yeah, that's what he had.
Yeah.
You just didn't want to face him.
Intangibles out the wazoo.
And who got the game-winning single in the bottom of the 10th? So it's winning. Forget his name.
Dang it, who was it?
Because it was weird because I think there's a guy on third base, and he hit when he hits the ball.
I said it earlier, didn't I?
I think you did.
Gene Larkin, I think.
Gene Larkin, yeah, that's it. So it was such a funny play because there's a guy in third base, and he hits it to the outfield, and it's at least a sac fly. The Braves know it. They just let the ball go. It just sails, and then because it's a fair ball and no one ever touches it, Larkin looks confused when he goes around first, like, okay, what should I do? Should I go to second? Do I go to third? and then he just kind of runs off and starts celebrating with the rest of the team. It's just a weird way to end the series.
Drove a single in the deep left center field over a drawn in outfield.
Yeah, because they just let it go.
But, all right, since we agreed on two, we're probably agreeing on one. So since you talked about two, I'll talk about one. Number one to me is a no-doubter. It's the 1975 World Series between the Cincinnati Reds and the Boston Red Sox. The Reds had won 108 games. The Red Sox had won 95. Similar, the same records as 1986, that World Series, which was one of the great World Series of all time also. Game one, the Reds were huge favorites. Game one, Don Gollett, who was considered one of the better pitchers in baseball at that time, faced Luis Tiant. If I remember right, Tiant even got a hit in the game as a DH. I think he might have been the first pitcher to get a hit in the World Series as a DH. But that was the only game in the series that you could really be considered a blowout. It was a 6-0 game, but it was 6-0 until you got to the bottom of the seventh when the Red Sox put up 7 runs to win it. Game two, Bill Spaceman Lee held the Reds to 4 hits through 8 innings. I think people forget the Reds were down 2-1 going to the 9th inning of that game. I know there was a long rain delay during the game, but the Reds rallied in the 9th inning. Bench led off the inning with a double down the right field line. Concepcion tied the game by singling Bench in. Then Concepcion steals second with 2 outs. King Griffey doubles in Concepcion with the go-ahead run. Reds tied the series up at 1. They go back to Cincinnati. Boston takes an early lead. The Reds come back, get the lead back, actually win the game in the bottom of the 10th, 6-5. I believe Joe Morgan knocked in Geronimo by hitting a deep fly over the center, over the drawn-in outfield, similar to the 1991 World Series.
Right.
Reds were up 2-1, took a 2-0 lead in the first inning. Boston came back, put up 5, 4th or 5th inning. Reds came back, scored a couple. Game stayed there. Boston wins the game 5-4. Then you get Game 5, which was the closest thing to a Cincinnati blowout, which the Reds won 6-2, but it was a 2-1 game going into the 7th inning. So the Reds are up 3-2. They got a chance to finally win a World Series. Reds hadn't won a World Series since 1940. Of course, the Red Sox hadn't won since 1918. Game 6, I think, was the greatest baseball game ever played. The Red Sox go up 3-0. The Reds come
Wouldn't
back.
be any bias there, right? No bias, right?
Watch the game.
Totally objective.
You know what? I'm getting tired of your mouth. Seriously. Just because the Milwaukee Brewers suck their entire history except for 1 year, you got to be all hateful and everything.
Come on now, you give me a hard time if I even bring my team up.
Hey, just be quiet, all right? Come on. Let me talk. I let you talk. I didn't interrupt you when you talked about the World Series.
Go ahead, man.
Come on. And for some reason in my head, I keep thinking of Fred Merkel and his boner. But
great.
But it's 6-3 Reds going to the bottom of the 8th. Bernie Carbo comes up to pinch hit. The interesting thing about Bernie Carbo is Johnny Bench, greatest baseball player, greatest catcher to ever lived, was drafted in the 2nd round by the Cincinnati Reds, I think in 1967. But Bernie Carbo was the number 1 pick. He flamed out with the Reds. He went to the Red Sox. He comes up, hits a 3-run home run. I think it was to center field, wasn't it? Or a little bit right center to tie the game at 6. Then you get George Foster throwing the runner out in the bottom of the 9th to save the game. You get Dwight Evans making the home run saving catch against Joe Morgan, I think, in the 11th. And then you get Carlton Fisk with the walk-off home run that hits the left field line, and Kirk Gowdy is going absolutely crazy, which would only last for that night because 24 hours later he wasn't very happy. So, really, this series was a lot like the 86 World Series.
Yeah, it was.
So you had them coming back, but the only difference was the Reds didn't lay down like the Red Sox did in 86. Another thing people forget was Boston goes up 3-0 after winning that dramatic game, and it stays 3-0 to the top of the 6th when Spaceman Lee comes in, throws these ephus pits to Tony Perez, who had a terrible World Series, but Perez was one of the best clutch hitters in baseball. He hits a home run to make it 3-2. Reds tie it up at 3 after that, I think, in the 7th inning. And then in the 9th inning, Joe Morgan singled home the winning run to win the World Series 4-3. And I think It was a World Series that brought baseball back to being the main thing on TV, or the main sport on TV. I mean, I think I remember seeing where like 75 million people watched that game. If you look at that World Series, it was so tightly contested that the thing that's amazing to me is Boston actually outscored the Reds in the series 30-29, and they outhit the Reds 60-59. I don't think how you can get...
It ain't by much, though.
Yeah, you can't get much tighter statistics than that. I mean, the one difference that may be a little bit more glaring, especially the games at Riverfront Stadium, the total errors for that series, the Reds in 7 games made a total of 2 errors. The Red Sox in 7 games made 6 errors.
Right.
Which had a lot to do with the 1-run win in Cincinnati also. Plus, you had the controversial call, I think it was in Game 3 of the series, with Ed Armbruster's bunt and the Red Sox wanting interference and Darryl Johnson coming out and arguing with the umpire. And then you just look at all the Hall of Fame players. You had Yastrzemski, you had Fisk. Then you had guys like Rico Petrocelli, Dwight Evans, Fred Lynn, Jim Rice. Jim Rice didn't play in the series.
Wait, I was going to say, did Jim Rice miss that series?
No, and I think Rice wasn't he the Rookie of the Year that year?
Yeah, I think if they had Jim Rice, that... Yeah,
they still would have lost.
You never know. That your beloved 75 Reds might not have won that series.
Yeah, okay, whatever. One guy didn't make that big a difference. I mean, come on. Give me a break. But what's your number one, Matt?
Well, this is why you don't have to give me a hard time there, but it's my number one series, too. I think what really...
give you a hard time all the time.
Yeah, that's true. You can't. It is in your blood. But I think what really separates this series from the rest are, and what, at first, okay, I didn't watch the game, that series live. I had to wait until MLB put out that box set to watch that series. So, but I do remember watching 1986, Game 6. That was amazing, and same with 91. But what really what separates 1975 from these other series, especially 1986, was my favorite World Series, was you still have the dramatic Game 6, but the Game 7 is what separates it out, because the Reds really could have buckled under the pressure, just like the Red Sox ended up doing in 1986. But it was really Tony Perez's 2-run homer and then Joe Morgan. For them to come back and win another dramatic game with their backs against the wall on the road. It was on the road, right? That was in Boston, wasn't it?
It was in Boston.
I mean, that's amazing.
Well, and the other amazing thing about it is you got to think back. In 73, they won like 102 games. The New York Mets had only won 83, and they'd lose in a 5-game series that goes to the deciding 5th game there. They lost maybe the closest World Series in history against Oakland in 1972, and then in 1970 they'd been beaten by the Baltimore Orioles in 5 games. So this was a team, to me this team is the equivalent of the Buffalo Bills winning that 4th Super Bowl.
Yeah.
You got so much pressure because you failed so many times. And then to throw on top of that, being an out away and having Bernie Carbo, a former Red, pinch hit and hit a 3-run home run to tie the game. Then have Carlton Fisk hit the home run after Dwight Evans had robbed you of a home run in the 11th inning, I believe it was. I mean, it would have been very easy for him to lay down. And I mean, to me, that's what makes it a great World Series, plus the fact that the series is played, the majority of that series is played in Fenway Park, which to me is the mecca of baseball parks.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean,
the Green Monster and everything.
Yeah, the TV, you got Kurt Gowdy doing the games with Dick Stockton or Marty Brenneman. I mean, those guys are all Hall of Famers. So everything that surrounded the entire thing, I mean, Sparky Anderson's a Hall of Famer. I mean, you've got, if you look at it, you could almost put a Hall of Famer at every position on the field when you combine the two teams.
Yeah. Yeah, the rosters top to bottom were just amazing. You got some of the best players ever at their position. And Johnny Bench is probably the best catcher ever. Joe Morgan, if he's not the best catcher ever, he's the best second baseman ever.
Johnny Bench
he's like
is the
one
greatest
of 2.
catcher that ever lived. Anybody that will dispute that's an idiot.
I'm just saying. and then
Joe
you
Morgan
got probably
is
one of the top
second
4
that ever lived also.
Right, between him, Ryan Sandberg, and maybe a couple other guys, but probably Joe Morgan is number one.
When did Ryan Sandberg win back-to-back MVPs and hit 30 home runs and drive in 100 plus bat 330?
He did pretty darn close, but not back-to-back MVPs.
Yeah, he was pretty darn close at Wrigley Field. Riverfront Stadium was a hard place to hit a home run.
Right.
Wasn't like
yeah, I would agree. I think Joe Morgan probably is the best second baseman ever. I mean, Ryan Sandberg is probably had the most power and did it quite a lot as well. But, yeah, I'd probably have to agree. Joe Morgan. I don't know. Sandberg had a lot of gold gloves. Joe Morgan I don't know how many gold gloves Joe Morgan had, but he probably had a lot,
9
too.
or 10.
Yeah, that's about right. So
he won like 8.
No, but when you go up and down the roster, I mean, Carlton Fisk, he's one of the best catchers of all time.
Yeah, neither team had a weakness.
Right. It really was a tremendous series. I don't really see a better one. You go up and down. You go as far back as you want, and all the way up to last year. I just don't see how you can get a better series than that.
Well, I guess we agree then. But that's a first. But we agree roughly, so that should make it more interesting to listen to.
Well, I think we had a lot of the same teams in the top 10. We had a few differences, but it wasn't like either of us picked a really crazy World Series, like a sweep or something like that. For all great World Series.
Of course, 1990 might still be my favorite. But
what's that? 1990?
1990 might still be my favorite, though.
86 was my favorite. That was, I don't know if I'll ever see anything like that again, but
my favorite was 75, and the cool thing is the first one I really remember watching.
Yeah.
Because I'd have been like 7 years old, and I remember my mom even getting the dishes done as quick as she could so she could sit down and watch the game. I also believe that's the year that our TV went out right before the playoffs, and it was on like a Sunday. Yeah, and my dad had to go find a TV on a Sunday because the series started on like a Monday, so we were freaking out there too.
Yeah, 89 I remember watching a lot, but that was a sweep. That was the earthquake series. It was a pretty dramatic moment in our country's history. But
well, if you lived in California, it was.
But there was a few other series I wanted to throw in there, but I couldn't throw 85 in there. I didn't think 82 was that. There's a lot of good
85. I mean, was 85 and 87 were games or series where there weren't that many dramatic games. I mean, 85 had the game 6 with the blown call, but other than that. All right, everybody, make sure you check out our sponsor, Gridiron Mo, at www.gridironmo.com. That's a new interactive football app where you can call the plays during the game and see how you compare to everybody else. Next week, I think we're going to have Randall Morris, former Seattle Seahawk in the mid-'80s on. Also, former middleweight champion of the world, Winky Wright, will be on the boxing show with me and Dave Sidursky next Tuesday night. Matt, when is your 49er Weekly show next week?
I got to connect with Dexter. He's had some phone problems. Actually, helped him with a phone situation. So I'm hoping to hear from him tomorrow or Thursday, and I'm guessing we will definitely have one before the season starts. Probably going to do a wrap up of the preseason, just do a preview. And when do you got your Bengals show starting?
The Bengals show will be out for everybody to hear probably next Wednesday. That'll be me and former Cincinnati Bengal linebacker Joe Kelly. He was a linebacker on the Super Bowl 23 team. They should have been the world champions, but we got screwed over there. But that's all right. I mean, because it's the only thing 49er fans have to cheer about. So
yeah, well, at least they got something, right?
Yeah. And like I said, we will have a top 10 greatest teams in NBA history show that you can look forward to in the next day or two. Ralph Garcia from NGSC Sports is going to come on here, and he said he's going to school me on the NBA. So Ralph,
he's going to school you, I'm assuming.
He's going to school me.
He's going to school me too. I'm assuming he's going to school me too. Then.
Us both. So Ralph, if you're listening, your ass better be ready. So
yeah.
I don't take idle threats like that. Do you, Matt?
I do not, and here's the thing. You and I have a little bit of experience going at this, so if Ralph isn't careful, he's going to get double-teamed pretty fast.
So, Ralph, if you're listening, you better be ready. And I think we're going to do a show also on the 10 best season-opening games in NFL history, too, correct, Matt?
Yeah. We're going to, a good way to start the start the NFL season off with a show going through the 10 best openers ever.
But make sure you check out the website, ngscsports.com, where they never stop. And then check out www.thegruelingtruth.com. You can follow me on Twitter at RiverMonster11. You can follow Matt at
MTA Scavage.
And make sure if you get a chance, you go on. Huh?
I was just saying you can find it on our website.
Okay. But don't talk too much. I'm the host, all right? Just be quiet. I'm just kidding, Matt.
Yeah, I know. I'm a bully. I'm sorry.
I know. And they play each other this year, too. So
we're going to have a lot of fun that week.
Well, I will, because, like I said, we'll be like 10-2, and you guys will be like 3-9, trying to figure out where things went wrong.
Well, yeah, then you have zero excuse, right? You guys should blow us away 45-3.
Oh, it wouldn't even matter by then, though, because we're going to playoffs for the 5th straight year, and you guys are sitting on the bench watching for the 2nd straight year.
Is this going to be the year Andy Dalton doesn't blow it in the playoffs?
Andy Dalton's never blown it in the playoffs. Marvin Lewis has. And no, this will probably not be the year where they don't blow it in the playoffs. I'm sure they will, but that's why it's rough being a
Those 7 interceptions weren't his fault, huh?
No, bad play calling.
Alrighty.
Nothing's Andy Dalton's fault. He's got red hair. You should not make fun of people with red hair. I mean, they have it rough enough because, anytime somebody gets really pissed off at somebody, they always say, I'm going to beat you like a redheaded stepchild. So you got to feel bad for him right there to begin with.
True. Really should be taking these things into consideration.
I know. So, I mean, he's been picked on his whole life for, being a, what do they call them?
Gingers.
A ginger, yeah. Which, I mean, I don't know. The only ginger I ever knew about was the Gilligan's Island, but
I think that's
Mary Ann better. I don't know about you. I like dark hair.
I'm a Mary Ann person, too.
Yeah. So luckily my wife's got dark hair. But, well, we're starting to ramble now, so we have to wrap this up. Remember to check us out on Facebook, the Grueling Truth Facebook page. Go like it. You get all the show updates. All the shows will be posted there, all of our sports rants articles. But you got any final words, Matt?
No, overall, just really good list. I thought, there really wasn't anything. I don't think there was really any series that we mentioned that didn't belong in the top 10, and it was good because there was a little bit of variety. And then ultimately, we agree that our top 2 are definitely the best 2 that we ever saw.
All right. Well, everybody, remember to go check out Gridiron Mo at www.gridironmo.com. For Matt Andruscavage, I'm Mike Goodpaster. Thanks for listening to The Grueling Truth, where the legends speak.